I never thought a quiet weekend in the mountains could turn into a lesson about power, prejudice, and how far some people will go when they think you don't belong. My name is David Langston. For the past 10 years, my wife Marcia and I have worked hard to build a life we're proud of. I served in law enforcement U.S. Marshal Service, Tactical Division, before taking early retirement. These days, I spend my time consulting, mentoring young officers, and when I can, retreating to our cabin up in Pine Hollow Ridge, a quiet, forested stretch where the air smells like pine and peace. That weekend, we drove up late Friday hoping for rest. The city had been loud with tension, and Marcia needed the calm. She's a school counselor, the kind of woman who carries everyone's burdens until they start to weigh her down. The cabin was our escape, our reset button. Saturday morning, she was on the porch with her coffee, wrapped in her cream cardigan, just taking in the stillness. I was inside frying eggs when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. 2 vehicles rolled up, a black SUV and a white pickup. No sirens, no clear markings. But what caught my attention were the uniforms, navy blue shirts with shiny badges that didn't look quite right. They stepped out, 3 men, all white, middle-aged, stiff shoulders, mirrored shades. One had a clipboard. Another wore a belt with a holstered pistol. They looked official, but something in my gut told me they weren't. I stepped out to meet them, but one of them, stocky, sunburned, was already barking orders. "Ma'am, you're trespassing on private property. Step away from the porch." Marcia froze. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice calm but startled. "This is our property." "Not according to the HOA records," the man snapped. "We've had complaints. We need to see your ID." She looked confused. "HOA? There's no homeowners association out here. We're outside town limits." The man took a step closer, hand hovering near his holster. "Ma'am, we can do this the easy way or the hard way." That's when I came down those steps. "Morning," I said evenly. "You gentlemen want to tell me who you are?" The one with the clipboard turned toward me. "This doesn't concern you, sir." I smiled, a quiet, cold kind of smile. "It does, because that's my wife you're talking to. And this," I gestured around, "is our land." He frowned. "Sir, we're with the Pine Hollow HOA Compliance Division." "Really?" I said. "Got ID?" He flashed a badge so quickly it might as well have been a grocery store loyalty card. My eyes caught the shine of plastic, not metal. No agency seal, no serial number. I'd seen enough real credentials in my time to spot fakes instantly. Marcia stepped closer to me, whispering, "David, what's happening?" Kept my voice low. "They're not real, baby. Stay behind me." The man with the holster puffed his chest. "We've got reports of unauthorized occupancy. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to detain you both until the sheriff arrives." "Detain?" I repeated. "On what authority?" "Community authority," he said. "You're not registered residents." I couldn't help the short laugh that escaped me. "You're kidding." The moment stretched long and tense. The wind rustled the pines. A hawk cried in the distance. Then, slowly, I reached into my jacket pocket. Not fast, not threatening, and pulled out my leather ID case. The gold emblem of the United States Marshal Service caught the sunlight as I flipped it open. Their expressions shifted. First confusion, then panic. "Now," I said quietly. "You want to tell me again who you're with?" No one spoke. I stepped forward, lowering my tone to something calm but dangerous. "You've just threatened a federal officer and attempted an unlawful detention on private property. That's a felony." The one with the clipboard stammered. We were just following procedure." "Procedure?" I asked. "Show me the paperwork." He hesitated, glancing at the others. Finally, he pulled out a folded sheet of paper, clearly printed from a home computer. No official letterhead, no seal, just words typed in bold. Pine Hollow Ridge HOA Security Notice. It was a fraud, plain and simple. "Listen," I said, my patience thinning. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me where you got this, or I'm calling in real law enforcement. And I don't mean the local sheriff, I mean federal." The man paled. "We didn't mean any harm. just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. You know how it is. Strangers. Strangers. I cut him off, stepping closer. You mean black folks? He swallowed hard. No one said a word. But silence, in moments like that, says more than words ever could. Marsha's voice was steady but filled with quiet fury. You came here because you didn't think we belonged. Because we didn't fit your idea of who owns a cabin in these woods. The smallest man, the one who hadn't spoken yet, finally muttered, "We just had complaints, that's all." "Complaints from who?" I asked. He looked away. I took out my phone, recording everything now. "Names. I want names. Or I'll have the real deputies up here in 10 minutes. That was enough to make them backpedal. They mumbled something about misunderstanding, turned, and started for their trucks. But I wasn't done. I noted their license plates. "Go ahead," I said. "Drive off. But know this. Pretending to be law enforcement is a federal crime, and I'm filing charges." They drove off fast, tires spitting gravel. Marsha turned to me, her eyes wide with a mix of relief and disbelief. "David, they could have—" "I know," I said softly. "But they didn't." I put my arm around her, leading her inside. The calm that had filled our morning was gone, replaced by a heaviness I hadn't felt in years. Because this wasn't just about fake cops, it was about the quiet assumption, the one that says we don't belong. That night, I filed the report. Real deputies came out, and they were as shocked as I was. One of them, a young black officer named James, shook his head. "Sir, we've been getting complaints about these guys for months. A bunch of locals pretending to enforce HOA rules, targeting newcomers, mostly people of color." He paused, looking around our property. "But you handled it better than most would have." I smiled faintly. "Experience," I said, "and patience running thin." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees again, but the peace we came for had been stolen. I looked at Marsha, her hands still trembling slightly, and knew this wasn't over. By Monday morning, the world had changed again. The fake officers had disappeared, but not before I made some calls. I wasn't looking for revenge, just justice. See, when you've worn that badge, when you've stood in the field and seen both sides of the law, you understand the difference between authority and abuse. What they did wasn't just harassment, it was a message. The kind of message people like us have been getting for generations. Know your place. Well, I've spent my whole life defying that message. By noon, I was on a call with my former commanding officer, Marshal Royce Daniels. A man of integrity, steel in his eyes, but warmth beneath it. When I told him what happened, there was silence for a beat. Then he said, "David, you did right, but we're not letting this slide." I could hear him typing on his end. "Send me the footage, the plates, everything." By sunset, the investigation was underway. 2 of those men were ex-security guards. One had a record, harassment, impersonation. They'd been running this fake HOA racket for over a year, bullying anyone they didn't approve of. And they'd finally crossed the wrong man. When the U.S. Marshals arrived in Pine Hollow, it wasn't with fanfare or flashing lights. It was quiet, professional, surgical. They picked the men up without a word wasted. Just cuffs and silence. Marsha watched from the cabin window as the real law handled the fake. "They didn't know who you were," she whispered. I turned to her. "Didn't need to. They just needed to learn there are still consequences." She smiled, sad, but proud. "You think it'll change anything?" I looked out at the mountains, the sun dipping low and painting everything in gold. "Maybe not for everyone," I said. "But for us, for the next black family that buys a cabin here, it might mean one less knock on the door." Later that evening, I sat by the fire, replaying it all. The anger, the fear, the resolve. It wasn't about ego or proving power. It was about something deeper, about standing in the truth that we belong anywhere our hard work takes us. When the story hit local news, the comments were split. Some people cheered for justice. Others said we overreacted. But that's how it always goes, doesn't it? The ones who've never felt the weight of suspicion will always think it's light. Still, messages poured in, people saying thank you, saying they'd been through the same thing but never knew how to fight back. One woman wrote, "You stood your ground with dignity. You reminded us that silence isn't peace, it's surrender." That line stuck with me. A week later, the sheriff visited personally. "Mr. Langston," he said, "on behalf of the county, I want to apologize. You and your wife deserve better." I shook his hand. "Apology accepted. Just make sure this doesn't happen again." He nodded. "We will." And maybe he meant it, or maybe he just wanted to move on. Either way, I knew we'd made an impact. Justice, real justice, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just one act of courage echoing in a quiet forest. That night, Marcia leaned against my shoulder, her voice soft. "You know what I realized?" "What's that?" "That no matter where we go, people will test our right to belong. But the answer never changes. We belong because we earned it, because we built it, because we stand tall." I looked at her and smiled. "And because we don't bow." The fire crackled. The mountains stood silent witnesses to our peace reclaimed. And though the scars of that day would stay, they'd serve as reminders, not of pain, but of power, of the truth that dignity doesn't need permission. If the story moved you, share it, not for me, but for every family who's ever been told they don't belong. Because our voices matter, our stories matter, and when we stand together, no fake badge in the world can silence our truth. Subscribe for more stories that speak courage, justice, and Black pride.